Hello and welcome to another episode of Live Harp Lesson. I'm going to just quickly go through some technical admin. Let me know if you can hear me and if you can see me. I just need to check on my phone if the live is live, because now I'm not looking at the screen, not using the front camera, which was previously resulting in the harp being inverted. So now, to check if the things are working, I need to use my phone to see if the live is indeed live. But if you can send me some comments and confirm that it's all fine on your side as well, that would be amazing. So just a few moments of just checking if technicalities are fine, and then we will start properly, and I'm going to introduce myself and turn the sound off as well. We've only started doing that last week because lots of people were saying that it's very confusing seeing the harp from that angle. So right now we've got the harp at the correct angle, but at the expense of those few moments at the beginning of the live to just check if everything is working. It seems that everything is fine on my side. Let me know if that's the case for you as well. As usual, you can watch replay on my website. The link is in the description of that Facebook Live. And I think it will be a good moment to introduce myself if you are watching my live harp lessons for the first time. So my name is Zuzanna and I'm a harpist and harp teacher, and I'm based in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it's actually really windy here today. So if you hear a bit of that wind, I'm really sorry, you're quite close to the window where the device is placed, but I hope you can still understand me well. As always, please remind me if you need me to speak more slowly or more loudly. It can be a bit random how this comes across on the other side through the internet, so just let me know if there's anything I can do on my side to help you. Today's topic is fingerings and intervals, fingerings for different intervals. I had a few messages saying that people would appreciate a bit more lessons on fingerings, because that's sometimes what people find confusing, and I thought that intervals is a good starter, because once you learn that and once your fingers learn that, then a lot of the harp playing becomes much more intuitive, and you can even read the music much more easily without trying to figure out all the single notes. You will see all the examples that I've put in today's PDF. As always, there is a free PDF that you can download from my website. If you go through the link in the description, you will be able to subscribe to my newsletter to get the information about each weekly live harp lesson, and you will get access to today's PDF and to all the PDFs from the lessons. So onwards, no, not onwards, sorry, I've got one important announcement before we start today's topic. I've launched a survey on the topic of reading music and learning to play the harp. So if you are a harp learner, or if you want to learn to play the harp, but the topic of reading the music is something that you feel either a bit anxious about, or you've read music before but you are not sure how much you remember, or anything else, you might even be a harpist who has played the harp for many years but only learning to play the pieces by ear, and now you want to explore learning to read the music. Any of these situations, please use the link that you will find in the description of that live and fill in my survey. It will take you about 5 to 10 minutes, depending how much or how little you would like to add in terms of comments and your own thoughts. I will really appreciate your help. I've got about 40 replies for now, so I will not be sharing the results just yet, because I'm hoping a few more people who watch that lesson will fill in the survey. I will be closing that in a couple of days, and then see if I can make something useful of your replies in terms of creating more materials, specifically perhaps an online course to help with that problem. Okay, thank you for your patience with all the announcements and with all the technical comments. As usual, say hello and ask if there's anything at all that you need me to repeat or say slowly or explain in more depth. So today's topic, intervals and fingerings for different intervals. At the first page, on the first page of my PDF, you will find the rules for different intervals and placing, and these go as follows. Let me put the harp in C major, because that will be possibly a bit easier to explain. So an interval of second is an interval that you will find on two neighboring strings. So for example C and D, of course that's played as thumb and second finger. You've probably done a lot of those already. And then interval of third is second and thumb, and interval of fourth is second and thumb. In the PDF I'm explaining that perhaps the terminology for intervals may be sometimes a tiny bit confusing, because you see the interval of second, for example, is called second, which would imply that there are two steps, but actually there is just one step between the two notes. It can be half tone or semitone. We won't go too much into that, but you see two strings between your fingers. So that could be a hint for you that this is the interval of second. How many strings you see between your fingers? So, for example, with the interval of fifth, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strings limited by your two fingers. So that's a useful hint that the number of strings will give you the size of the interval. So we are on the fifth, so that's starting to become thumb and third finger, then sixth, the next step, thumb and third finger still, and then the next step, the interval of seventh, just short of an octave, will be 1 and 4, and 1 and 4 will be also for the octave. A quick explanation about the interval of fifth. Some books and methods, I think in fact majority of harp books and methods, give you the possibility of playing fifths either with 1 and 3 or 1 and 2, and of course both work fine, especially if you've got longer fingers. With my new students, with someone who is new to the harp, I usually tell them that it's best to start with 1 and 3, first because you are just given a number and you stick to it and you don't have to make the decision every time when you see a fifth. Second, this is also the interval that will contain chords when you get to play chords later. A chord is 3 notes, for example C major chord is C, E, G. So if your fingers are used to having the interval of fifth between them, then the only thing you will need to do to add a chord will be adding that second finger. So that's why I usually say start with playing fifths with third finger. So to recap, second finger for thirds, and the thumb is always on the top, for fourths, then fifths and sixths, that's difficult to pronounce, that's 1 and 3, and then sevenths and octaves 1 and 4. Now, on to exercises. There will be 4 exercises in today's PDF. It's quite a lengthy one, but I'm explaining the first one in big detail and giving you all the options. Then in later exercises I'm giving you just an example of one interval, one hand. So the first exercise is just to get the feeling of where your fingers are going when you increase the size of the interval. So we will start with the interval of second, so playing 1 and 2, and then we will move our second finger down, that will become a third. Thumb holds on to the middle C, then going to fourth, second finger. Now we're moving to third finger because we're starting to play the fifth and then sixth. Here make sure that your second finger is not sticking out so that it doesn't do anything like that. It doesn't have to stay glued to the hand either, it's just enough to have it relaxed and free to move, same as all the other fingers which are not playing, staying roughly pointing down what the gravity makes them do. So that will be interval of third, then sixth, and then seventh and octave. And you can do the same with the right hand, starting from the high C, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on, sixth, seventh and octave. That's just to give you the feeling with thumb staying in one place on the note that feels most familiar, and how that then changes the situation for the other fingers. Now, exercise number 2. I'm not seeing any comments so far, so I just wanted to make sure that everything is working okay on your side. If not, I'm having a recording made of that lesson, so if there are any technical issues we can swap one for the other, and you can always watch the replay on the website. Onwards to exercise number 2. I stick to one interval and play this interval in a sort of scale going upwards. In the PDF I use the interval of third, but you can do that with all the other intervals. So I start with C, E with the right hand, and then I move the same size of the interval up, D, F, E, G, F, A, and so on, going up, going down, same with the left hand. And here it's quite important, especially if you are only learning to read the music, to notice what can make life easier for you. When you look at the paper, how those intervals of thirds are written on the paper, you will see that if they are written as a chord, the two heads of the notes will be touching each other, and both of them will be either on the lines or in the spaces. Then when you move to the interval of four strings between your fingers, you will see that the bottom note is usually on. If the bottom note is on line, then the top note will be in a space, and vice versa, and notes will not be touching each other. So if you play those intervals as you follow them with the music, that will be very helpful for your eyes also to learn different patterns, because then you will not need to read one note as an element on its own. You will be able to see what kind of pattern then they form together. And of course, as you do those exercises, your fingers learn what kind of distance happens between them. It's helpful to think about that. That was actually an inspiration from one of my students, to think of that as a sort of stamp shape. So interval of fifth would be roughly that. That would be the size of your stamp, and you would be just stamping all the strings that form that shape. I also like to think about that as a cookie cutter, because I'm very keen on food, and especially sweet food. And I quite like thinking that we're cutting the shape of a cookie, and we've got different cookie forms for different intervals. Of course, you always close and release your hands, but try to think that you've always got that cookie cutter shape in your fingers hidden somewhere there, and that it will remember what it sees on the page, and to translate it to the distance between the fingers. So you carry on like that with all the intervals. You do the scales of sixths, sevenths, octaves, and all the others in between. Then that progresses to exercise 3. If you've done the one with chords, that will be very easy, because you still place both fingers on the chords as you did before. Here we will use right hand 6 as an example, and you're going to play bottom note first, top note second, and continue with your scale like that, and then going down as well. You can start going with the scale up, playing the notes going down, but you can also make the return journey from that and mix them up if you like. It can be quite a creative thing, it doesn't have to be a boring exercise. And you can do that same with the left hand and with all the intervals. If you want, you can start from the second. In most exercises I start from the third, but you can mix and match however many intervals you want. And then to the last exercise, number 4, it is a variation and addition to the previous exercise, in the sense that you still start with both fingers on the strings. Here we will use the right hand third as an example, and you start with the second finger, you put it back on the same string, you play the thumb, you play the second finger. So effectively you go a return on the same note, and then you can carry on going up in the same way. And in the PDF I'm including the little notes to show you where you need to place your second finger, so it gets the feeling of how that interval feels when you're starting, and how does that feel to come back to the same string, and how does that shape feel when you're doing that. And it's quite important that you do it rhythmically, so you can have the rhythm that I suggest in this exercise of minim, so going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you come away between each group of the notes. And of course you can do that the other way around as well, playing thumb, placing it back, playing second, coming away, playing thumb, coming away, and so on, placing it back, playing, coming away. Yeah, so that can also be used in many variations. You can even do hands together. If you are adventurous, you can have the hands playing in the 2 different directions. But far first try the basic exercise and see how you feel with that. There will be plenty of opportunities and plenty of time to experiment. So, I hope you are enjoying this so far. I've picked a piece for today that I'm not going to go explaining in detail how to practice. I just wanted to show it to you as an example of a piece which I think is quite useful when you're learning different intervals, because that piece contains quite a few of them. It's got thirds, it's got fifths and sixths. Trying to check if there are any other intervals, but I think that's it. Thirds, fifths, sixths, and no octave. So you can first do the exercises for those three intervals and then try to tackle that piece. It's quite a lovely one to play, and it is actually on the grade 1 syllabus, and it's called O Sanctissima, and it comes from the book by Samuel Milligan, Fun from the second book. I will put a link in the description of this live to where you can get that book from, and let me play that to you to finish today's live. Today's live was quite heavy on the exercises side, but I thought I like to include a piece of music as well to add something nice to finish off. So here is the O Sanctissima, Italian melody in arrangement by Samuel Milligan. And we've got the keys all fine. That was O Sanctissima by Samuel Milligan. I hope you enjoyed this live lesson. Let me know if you liked it and if you have any wishes at all for next topics. As usual, you can subscribe to get the free PDF for this lesson, to get the reminders of future lessons when they are published, and access to all the materials. And last but not least, if you haven't taken part in my survey yet, please do so. I will be very, very interested to hear from you if you learn to play the harp, and if you are thinking about improving reading the way you read music, or if you are thinking about learning to read the music as a complete beginner. That would be most appreciated. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and that the weather where you are is a bit better than what it is here. And if you're traveling, travel safely, hold on to your harps if you're traveling in the wind. I'll be looking forward to seeing you next week, same time. Take care, bye!